The champagne was vintage, the diamonds were real, but the smile on the mistress's face was pure poison. She stood in the center of the ballroom wearing the wife's favorite color, clinging to the husband's arm, and laughed as she told the rightful wife to fetch her a napkin. The guests whispered. The husband looked away. They thought Mina would break. They thought she would run. But they didn't know that the mansion they were standing in, the very floor beneath their feet, held a secret that was about to destroy them all. When the old patriarch finally tapped his glass for silence, he didn't offer a toast. He offered an eviction notice, and the name on the deed wasn't his son's. The rain battered against the high-arched windows of Blackwood Hall, a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding in Mina's temples. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, yet the grand estate was buzzing with the chaotic energy of a dozen caterers, florists, and event planners. Mina Blackwood stood at the top of the mahogany staircase, her hand gripping the banister so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She was 32, though the shadows under her eyes made her look older today. She wore a simple gray cashmere sweater and dark trousers, practical clothes for a woman who had spent the last week organizing the most important event of the social season, her father-in-law Arthur Blackwood's 70th birthday. Mrs. Blackwood, Mina snapped her attention to the young florist standing at the foot of the stairs. Yes, Thomas. The white lilies for the centerpieces. Mr. Julian just called. He canceled the order. Mina descended the stairs slowly, fighting the rising bile in her throat. He did what? He ordered red roses instead, the florist said, looking uncomfortable. $3,000 worth. He said lilies were too funereal. Mina closed her eyes for a brief second. Lilies were Arthur's favorite flower. They were the flower his late wife Martha had carried down the aisle 40 years ago. Julian, Mina's husband of 7 years, knew this. But Julian wasn't thinking about his father. He was thinking about her. Sarah. Sarah Miller loved red roses. Change it back, Thomas, Mina said softly but firmly. If my husband complains, tell him to speak to me. This is Arthur's night, not a Valentine's Day display. As the florist scurried away, the heavy oak front door swung open. A gust of cold wind swept into the foyer, followed by the sound of high heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Mina didn't need to look to know who it was. The scent arrived first, a heavy, cloying perfume that smelled of jasmine and musk. Chanel No. 5 applied with a heavy hand. God, it's freezing out there. Why is it always so dreary in this part of England? Mina turned. Standing in the doorway, shaking a wet umbrella onto the pristine antique rug, was Sarah Miller. She was younger than Mina by 5 years, with hair the color of spun gold and a figure that she flaunted in a coat that was far too tight and far too expensive for an assistant at a marketing firm. Sarah wasn't just Julian's assistant anymore. For the past 6 months, she had been the shadow looming over Mina's marriage, the whisper in the country club locker rooms, the smudge of lipstick on Julian's collar that he didn't even bother to wipe off anymore. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" Mina asked, her voice steady despite the shaking of her hands. Sarah looked up, feigning surprise. She flashed a bright, predatory smile. "Oh, Mina, I didn't see you there. You blend in with the drapes so well. Julian sent me." "Julian is at the office," Mina said, walking down the remaining steps to stand on the marble floor. She felt small in her own home, dwarfed by the audacity of this woman. "Actually, he's on his way," Sarah said, unbuttoning her coat to reveal a striking blood-red cocktail dress that hugged every curve. "He wanted me to check on the preparations. He's worried you might be overwhelmed. You know how you get with stress. He doesn't want you to embarrass the family tonight." The insult was precise, designed to cut deep. Mina had suffered a panic attack 3 years ago after a miscarriage, a moment of vulnerability Julian had never let her forget. He weaponized her grief, painting her as unstable to anyone who would listen. "I am managing perfectly fine," Mina said, her posture rigid. "And this is a family event, Sarah. You are not family. You are an employee." Sarah laughed, a tinkling, icy sound. She walked past Mina, trailing her hand along the edge of a console table, where a collection of Ming vases sat. An employee, is that what he tells you? Oh, honey, we both know I'm auditioning for a much more permanent role. Besides, Regina invited me. Mina froze. Regina? My mother-in-law invited you. She insisted. Sarah smirked, picking up a crystal figurine and inspecting it carelessly. She said she wanted some life at the party. She finds you so dreary. Honestly, I think she's right. Look at this place. It's a mausoleum. When I move in, this wallpaper has to go. When I move in. The air left the room. Mina stepped forward, her patience snapping. Get out. Sarah turned, eyebrows raised. Excuse me. I said get out of my house. Mina repeated, her voice rising. I don't care who invited you. I don't care who you're sleeping with. This is my home, and I will not have you disrespecting me under my own roof. Your roof! The booming voice came from the library door. Mina spun around. Regina Blackwood, her mother-in-law, stood there. Regina was a woman of 65 who fought the aging process with aggressive surgery and a wardrobe that cost more than most people's lifetime earnings. She held a martini glass, her eyes cold and hard as diamonds. Regina, Mina started. Sarah is my guest, Regina interrupted, gliding into the foyer. She ignored Mina completely and walked straight to Sarah, kissing the air beside the mistress's cheek. Sarah, darling, you look ravishing. That red is stunning on you, much better than the drab rags some people insist on wearing. She cast a withering look at Mina's gray sweater. Thank you, Regina, Sarah cooed, linking arms with the older woman. I was just telling Mina that I'm here to help, but she seems quite hysterical. Maybe she needs a nap before the guests arrive. You might be right, Regina said, sipping her drink. Mina, go upstairs, fix your hair, put on some makeup. You look like a washerwoman, and stop harassing Sarah. She's part of the family's future. You would do well to remember your place. My place, Mina whispered, the injustice burning in her chest. I have run this household for 7 years. I nursed Arthur when he had his stroke. I balanced the estate's books when Julian nearly gambled away the operating capital. I am your son's wife. For now, Regina said simply. It was a threat, clear and unambiguous. At that moment, the front door opened again. Julian Blackwood entered. He was a handsome man with the classic Blackwood dark hair and sharp jawline, but his eyes were weak, shifting nervously around the room. He shook off his umbrella, handing it to a silent butler who had appeared from the shadows. Julian, Sarah squealed, letting go of Regina to hurry over to him. She placed a hand intimately on his chest. Thank you for the roses. They are magnificent. Julian glanced at Mina, then quickly looked away. I'm glad you like them. Julian, Mina said, her voice cutting through the display. Why is she here? Julian sighed, running a hand through his hair. Mina, don't start. Not today. It's Father's 70th. I don't want a scene. Then you shouldn't have invited your mistress to your father's birthday party, Mina said. The word hung in the air. Mistress. Julian's face hardened. He walked over to Mina, looming over her. Sarah is a business associate and a family friend. You are being paranoid and jealous as usual. It's embarrassing. She just said she plans to change the wallpaper when she moves in. Mina challenged him. Is she moving in, Julian? Julian didn't answer. He looked at his mother. Regina gave a subtle nod. We'll discuss living arrangements later, Julian said dismissively. Right now you need to go change. The first guest, Senator Harrison, and his wife will be here in 2 hours. Do not embarrass me, Mina. If you cause one scene tonight, if you shed one tear or raise your voice, I will cut off your access to the accounts tomorrow morning. Do you understand? Mina looked at the three of them. The unholy trinity. Julian weak and cruel. Regina bitter and manipulative. Sarah hungry and vicious. They stood united against her in the foyer of the home she had polished, managed, and loved for 7 years. They thought they held all the cards. They thought Mina was trapped, a woman with no family of her own, No independent wealth, nowhere to go. They saw her silence as submission. Mina took a deep breath. She looked at Julian, really looked at him, and realized that the love she had once felt was gone. It had been eroded day by day, insult by insult, until nothing remained but a cold, hard resolve. "I understand," Mina said quietly. "I'll go get ready." "Good," Julian sneered. "Wear something decent. Try to look like you belong here." "Oh, don't worry," Sarah giggled, leaning her head on Julian's shoulder. "I'm sure she has a nice black dress. It's slimming right." Mina turned and walked up the stairs. She didn't run. She didn't cry. Her footsteps were steady on the plush carpet. As she reached the landing, she heard them laughing below. "She's so pathetic." Sarah's voice carried up the stairs. "Does she really think she's going to stay married to you much longer?" "Let her play hostess tonight," Regina said. "It's the last time. Once Arthur signs the amendment to the trust fund tonight, Julian, you'll have full control of the estate. Then we can discard her properly." Mina stopped. Her hand hovered over the door handle of the master bedroom. Once Arthur signs the amendment to the trust fund. So that was the plan. Tonight was Arthur's birthday, but it was also the night Julian expected to inherit the power to kick her out with nothing. Arthur, recovering from his stroke, had been largely absent from family affairs, secluded in the East Wing. They assumed the old man was senile, ready to sign whatever paper Regina put in front of him. Mina opened the door to her bedroom. It was a cold, grand room that she had never felt truly comfortable in. She walked to the closet, but she didn't reach for the modest black dress Julian expected. She reached to the back of the closet, past the gray wool and the sensible knits. Her hand landed on a garment bag she hadn't opened in years. Inside was a dress of midnight blue silk. It was backless, elegant, and regal. It was the dress she had worn the night Arthur had told her she was the daughter he never had. She walked to her vanity and sat down. She looked at her reflection. The tired woman was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone dangerous. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It rang twice. "Mr. Sterling?" she said into the receiver. "Mrs. Blackwood," a gravelly voice answered. It was Henry Sterling, Arthur's personal attorney and the most feared litigator in London. "I wasn't expecting a call until tomorrow." "Plans have changed, Henry," Mina said, her eyes fixed on her own reflection. "They are planning to have Arthur sign the amendment tonight." "I see," Sterling said. "Do you want me to intervene?" "No," Mina said. "Let them present the papers. Let them think they've won. Just make sure you bring the other document, the one we notarized 3 years ago." "Are you sure, Mina? Once we play this card, there is no going back. The family will be destroyed." Mina listened to the faint sound of Sarah's laughter drifting up from the foyer. "The family is already destroyed, Henry," she said coldly. "Tonight, we just bury the bodies. Bring the file? And Henry?" "Yes." "Wear your best suit. It's going to be a show." Mina hung up the phone. She picked up her hairbrush. The gala was starting in 2 hours. She had work to do. But for the first time in years, she wasn't dressing to please Julian. She was dressing for war. By 6 o'clock, the storm outside had intensified, thunder rumbling like distant artillery fire. But inside Blackwood Hall, the atmosphere was one of suffocating perfection. The chandelier's massive, cascading waterfalls of crystal had been dimmed to a warm golden glow. A string quartet played Debussy in the corner of the ballroom, the music floating over the heads of the county's elite. Senator Harrison had arrived, as had the wealthy Mrs. van der Hoven, the owner of the steel mills, and Lord Allister, a man whose gossip column was more feared than his political influence. They moved in a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, sipping vintage champagne and whispering behind gloved hands. But the real show wasn't the decor or the guest list. It was the greeting line. Typically, the host and hostess would stand at the entrance to the ballroom to welcome their guests. Tonight, Julian Blackwood stood there looking dashing in his bespoke Armani tuxedo. But standing next to him, beaming with the radiance of a woman who believes she has won the lottery, was not his wife. It was Sarah. She had retouched her makeup and was now clinging to Julian's arm as if she were a lifeline. She laughed too loudly at the senator's jokes and leaned in too close when speaking to the men. Mina stood in the shadows of the hallway arch, watching. She had descended the stairs 10 minutes ago, wearing the midnight blue silk gown. It was a masterpiece of design, draping over her figure like liquid water, the back plunging low to reveal elegant sculpted shoulders. She wore no jewelry except for her wedding ring, a simple band compared to the rocks dripping from the other women's necks, but her presence was undeniable. Or at least it would have been if anyone acknowledged her. Regina intercepted Mina before she could reach the ballroom floor. The older woman appeared out of the crowd like a specter in gray chiffon. "What do you think you are doing?" Regina hissed, grabbing Mina's elbow with a grip that was surprisingly painful. "I am greeting our guests, Regina," Mina replied, her voice cool and detached. "It is customary for the wife to do so." "Not tonight," Regina snapped. "Look at them." She gestured toward Julian and Sarah. "They look happy, radiant. Julian needs investors for his new venture, Mina. He needs to project vitality, youth, and excitement. Sarah provides that. You project exhaustion." "I project dignity," Mina corrected her. "Something this family seems to be in short supply of." Regina's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me. If you go out there and stand next to them, you will look like a sad third wheel. Do you want the senator to pity you? Do you want Lady Ashford to ask why your husband is holding another woman's waist? Stay back. Check on the catering. Make sure the wine doesn't run out. That is your speed." Mina looked at her mother-in-law, really seeing the malice etched into the wrinkles around her mouth. "You are asking me to act as a servant at my own husband's party." "I am asking you to be useful," Regina said coldly. "Or you can go back to your room and rot. It makes no difference to me." Regina turned on her heel and swept away to greet a banking executive. Mina smoothed the silk of her dress. She didn't retreat. She didn't go to the kitchen. Instead, she walked straight into the ballroom. A hush rippled through the room as she entered. It wasn't the silence of awe, but the silence of scandal. Everyone knew. In a town like this, everyone always knew. They looked from Sarah, shimmering in vulgar red, to Mina, regal in dark blue. She walked with her head high, moving through the crowd. She nodded politely to Mrs. Vanderhoven. "Mina," the older woman said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "You look brave." "I look comfortable in my own home, Beatrice," Mina replied with a tight smile. "Enjoy the champagne. It's a 98 Dom Perignon, my selection." She made her way toward Julian. As she approached, Sarah's laughter cut off abruptly. "Oh," Sarah said, her voice pitching up. "Here she is." Julian stiffened. He looked at Mina, his eyes widening slightly as he took in the blue dress. For a fleeting second there was a flash of something like regret, or perhaps just lust in his eyes. Mina had never looked more beautiful. But then he saw Sarah pouting beside him and the weakness returned. "Mina," Julian said, his voice strained. "I thought Mother told you to check on the kitchen." "The kitchen staff are professionals, Julian," Mina said loud enough for the senator standing nearby to hear. "I'm sure they can manage without my supervision. Happy birthday to your father. Speaking of whom, where is Arthur?" "He's resting," Julian said quickly. "He'll come down for the speeches." "Of course," Sarah interjected, stepping physically between Julian and Mina. She held out her empty champagne flute toward Mina. "Since you're not doing anything, Mina, would you mind? I'm parched. And a napkin, please. This condensation is sticky." The audacity of the request sucked the air out of the immediate vicinity. The senator pretended to examine a painting on the wall. Lady Ashford stopped fanning herself. Sarah was treating the wife like a waitress. Mina looked at the empty glass in Sarah's hand. The old Mina would have run away crying. The old Mina would have made a scene. The new Mina smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Certainly, Sarah," Mina said softly. She took the glass. For a moment Sarah looked triumphant. She turned to Julian, a smirk playing on her lips. "See?" She knows her place. But Mina didn't walk to the bar. She held the crystal flute between her fingers, turned it upside down, and let the few remaining drops of sticky, warm champagne drip onto the expensive Persian rug. Then she opened her hand. The crystal flute fell. It hit the marble border of the floor with a shattering crash that echoed through the silent ballroom. Smash. Every head turned. "Oh dear," Mina said, her voice calm and carrying through the room. "It seems things are slipping through everyone's fingers tonight. Integrity, loyalty, glassware." Sarah gasped, jumping back. "You crazy! You could have cut me." "But I didn't," Mina said, stepping over the shards. "Because unlike you, Sarah, I am careful with the things that matter." Julian grabbed Mina's arm, his face flushing red with anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he hissed under his breath. "The senator is watching. You are making us look like fools." "You are doing that all by yourself, Julian," Mina whispered back, pulling her arm from his grasp. "I'm just providing the sound effects." "That's it," Julian growled. "Go to the library, now, before I have security drag you out." "You wouldn't dare," Mina challenged him. "Try me," Julian snarled. "You are ruining this night. This is about the Blackwood legacy. You are nothing but a temporary occupant here. Get out of my sight." Mina held his gaze for a long second. She saw the fear behind his anger. He was terrified of losing control. "Fine," Mina said loud enough for the circle of eavesdroppers to hear. "I will go to the library. I believe there is some reading material there that requires my attention anyway." She turned and walked away, the blue silk flowing behind her like a royal cape. Sarah let out a dramatic, shaky breath, pressing her hand to her chest. "Oh, Julian, I'm so sorry. She's so unstable. I tried to be nice." "I know, baby, I know." Julian soothed her, though his eyes were still tracking his wife. "Ignore her. She's gone." "Ladies and gentlemen," Regina's voice rang out from the small stage at the front of the room, desperate to reclaim the narrative. "Please ignore the disturbance. My daughter-in-law has been under the weather lately. Let us focus on the man of the hour, the music, the food." The quartet hurriedly began to play a lively waltz. The guests went back to their conversations, the hum of gossip louder than before. "Did you see that?" The mistress asked for a drink. "Can you believe it? Julian looks like a fool. But Mina, did you see her eyes? She's planning something." Mina walked down the long corridor toward the library. The sounds of the party faded behind her. Her heart was pounding not with fear but with adrenaline. She reached the heavy oak doors of the library and pushed them open. The room was dark, lit only by the fire crackling in the hearth and a single green banker's lamp on the desk. Sitting in a high-backed leather wing chair by the fire was a figure hidden in shadow. "That was quite the exit," a voice rasped. It was weak, but the authority in it was unmistakable. Mina closed the door and locked it. "They are distracted, Arthur. They think I've come here to cry." Arthur Blackwood leaned forward into the firelight. The patriarch of the family looked frail. The stroke had taken the use of his left arm and left a slight droop to his face, but his eyes, steely gray and sharp as a hawk's, were clear. Sitting opposite him was Henry Sterling, the lawyer. On the desk between them lay two piles of documents. One pile was thin, the amendment Julian and Regina had drafted, giving Julian power of attorney and full ownership of the estate. The other pile was thick, bound in a blue folder stamped with the official seal of the High Court. "They're expecting me to sign the amendment after the cake is cut," Arthur said, his voice trembling slightly with rage. "Regina came in here an hour ago. She told me if I didn't sign they'd put me in a home. She said I was a burden." Mina crossed the room and knelt beside the old man's chair. She took his good hand in hers. "You are not a burden, Arthur. You built this empire, and tonight you're going to save it." "I'm tired, Mina," Arthur whispered, a tear tracking through the deep lines of his face. "My own son. How did he become this?" "He was spoiled," Henry Sterling said from the shadows, his voice dry. "And he married a woman, Regina, who values gold over blood. But tonight isn't about them, Arthur. It's about justice. Henry tapped the thick blue folder. The trust deed of 1985. The clause of moral turpitude. It's all here, Arthur. But you have to be the one to say it. Can you do it? Arthur looked at Mina. He looked at the bruise on her spirit, the exhaustion she tried to hide. He squeezed her hand. They treated you like a servant tonight, Arthur said. I heard the crash. They did. Mina nodded. Then I will treat them like trespassers, Arthur growled. He gripped his cane, his knuckles turning white. Help me up, Mina. It's time to blow out the candles. Back in the ballroom, the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the underlying electricity of scandal. The smashing of the champagne glass had been the appetizer. Now the guests were hungry for the main course. Julian Blackwood stood on the raised platform at the front of the room, tapping a silver spoon against his glass. The sound cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Beside him stood Regina, looking like a queen mother in her gray chiffon, and just a step behind, brazenly close, was Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, distinguished guests. Julian began, his voice smooth and practiced. He flashed a charming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Thank you for weathering the storm to be here tonight. 70 years is a milestone, isn't it? A polite ripple of applause moved through the room. My father, Arthur Blackwood, built this empire from nothing. Julian continued, gesturing to the grand hall around them. He was a man of steel and grit. But as we all know, times change. The world moves faster now. Markets evolve. And sadly, even the strongest titans must eventually rest. He paused for dramatic effect, looking down at his shoes with feigned solemnity. Dad hasn't been himself lately, Julian lied effortlessly. The stroke took a toll. It's been hard for the family to watch the decline of such a great mind. But that is why tonight is so important. Tonight isn't just a birthday. It's a transition. A promise that the Blackwood legacy is safe in new, younger hands. He turned and held out a hand, not to where his wife should have been, but to Sarah. I have big plans for Blackwood Industries, Julian announced, his voice gaining strength. We are expanding into tech, into global markets, and I couldn't have laid the groundwork for this new era without the tireless dedication of my executive team. Specifically, I want to thank Sarah Miller. The room went deadly silent. To thank a mistress in a speech while the wife was in the building was a breach of etiquette so severe it was almost impressive. Sarah stepped forward, beaming. She gave a little wave, reveling in the attention. She didn't care that half the room looked horrified. She only cared that she was standing where Mina should have been. Thank you, Julian, Sarah said, her voice amplified by the microphone as she leaned in. It's an honor to serve the family. She emphasized the word family with a smirk. Senator Harrison leaned over to Mrs. Vanderhoven. This is a train wreck, he whispered. The man is publicly crowning his mistress before the body is even cold. The body isn't dead yet, Senator, Mrs. Vanderhoven replied, her eyes narrowing. Though looking at Julian, he seems to think he's already king. And now, Regina interrupted, taking the microphone from her son. She was impatient. The speeches were just fluff. She wanted the ink on the paper. Before we cut the cake, we have a small formality to attend to. As Julian mentioned, Arthur's health requires him to step back fully. To ensure the stability of the estate and the company, Arthur will be signing over full power of attorney and transferring the deed of this property to Julian tonight. A collective gasp went through the room. Transferring the deed. That meant Arthur was making himself a guest in his own home. It meant Julian, and by extension Sarah, would have total control over who stayed and who left. It is Arthur's wish. Regina lied, her voice dripping with fake concern. He wants to spend his remaining days in peace without the burden of ownership. He wants to know his son is the master of Blackwood Hall. Regina signaled to the back of the room. Please bring him in. The heavy double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. But the sight that greeted them wasn't quite what Regina had expected. She had expected a nurse pushing the wheelchair. She had expected Mina to be hiding in a room weeping. Instead, Mina Blackwood walked through the doors. She had touched up her lipstick, a deep blood-red shade now, and her head was held high. She pushed the antique wooden wheelchair with a steady, purposeful gait. In the chair sat Arthur Blackwood. He was dressed in his tuxedo, a tartan blanket over his lap. His head was bowed slightly, his chin resting on his chest, looking every bit the frail invalid they claimed him to be. Walking beside them, carrying a black leather briefcase, was Henry Sterling. The lawyer looked like an undertaker, his face grim and unreadable. "Ah," Regina said, recovering quickly. "Here he is, and look, Mina has decided to join us after all. How dutiful." Sarah giggled into her champagne glass. "She's pushing the chair. At least she found a job she's qualified for." Mina ignored the commentary. She pushed the wheelchair straight down the center aisle, her eyes locked on Julian. The click of her heels was the only sound in the room besides the rain lashing against the windows. She reached the base of the platform and locked the brakes of the wheelchair. She then walked around to the front of the chair and knelt down, fixing Arthur's bow tie. It was a tender, intimate gesture that contrasted sharply with the coldness on stage. "Happy birthday, Arthur," she said softly, but in the silence everyone heard it. Regina clapped her hands. Yes, happy birthday. Now let's get this over with so Arthur can go back to bed. He looks exhausted. Julian, the papers." Julian stepped down from the platform holding a silver tray with a document and a gold fountain pen. He approached his father. "Hey, Dad." Julian said, his voice loud and condescending, the way one speaks to a child. "We're all here for you. Just a few signatures and you don't have to worry about anything ever again. I'll take care of the house. I'll take care of the money. You just rest." Arthur didn't move. His head remained bowed. "He's confused," Sarah said loudly from the stage, trying to be helpful. "Put the pen in his hand, Julian." Julian reached out and took Arthur's limp right hand. He pressed the gold pen into his father's fingers. "Right here, Dad," Julian said, pointing to the line on the document. "Transfer of deed, irrevocable. Just an X will do if you can't write your name." Mina stood up. She took a step back, standing beside Henry Sterling. She crossed her arms. She didn't intervene. She just watched. "Why isn't she stopping him?" Mrs. Vanderhoven whispered. "She's going to be homeless in 5 minutes." "Maybe she's finally given up," the senator replied. Julian guided Arthur's hand toward the paper. "Come on, old man. Do it for me. Do it for the family." Arthur's hand trembled. The pen hovered over the paper. The tip touched the page, leaving a small blot of ink. Then the trembling stopped. Arthur's hand became rock steady. Instead of signing, Arthur's fingers tightened around the pen. With a sudden violent motion, he stabbed the pen down, not onto the signature line, but through the paper, tearing a jagged hole right through the word Julian. Julian jumped back. "Whoa, Dad, be careful!" Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Arthur Blackwood lifted his head. The guests gasped. The confused look was gone. The droop in his face seemed less pronounced as his jaw set in a hard line. His gray eyes, usually cloudy with medication, were burning with a cold, terrifying fire. He looked at Julian. Then he looked up at Regina and Sarah on the stage. "I may be old," Arthur said. His voice was raspy, but it was loud enough to reach the back of the room without a microphone. "I may be sick, but I am not stupid, boy." Julian froze. "Dad, you're lucid." "Lucid enough to know a vulture when I see one," Arthur growled. He threw the ruined document onto the floor. "You want me to sign over my life's work to you, a man who brings his whore to his father's birthday party." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Whore. Sarah dropped her champagne glass. It shattered, echoing the sound Mina had made earlier. But this time no one looked at the glass. "Arthur!" Regina shrieked, her face turning pale. "How dare you! Your mind is gone! Henry, do something, he's having an episode." He seems perfectly sane to me, Regina, Henry Sterling said, stepping forward. He placed his briefcase on a nearby table and snapped the latches open. The sound was like 2 pistol shots. Click, click. "This is a trick," Julian shouted, trying to regain control. "Mina put him up to this. She's manipulating a senile old man because she knows I'm divorcing her." "Divorcing her?" Arthur let out a dry, rattling laugh. He unlocked the brakes of his wheelchair himself and spun it around to face the crowd. "You can't divorce her, Julian." "What are you talking about?" "Of course I can," Julian yelled. "I'm the heir, I own the company, I own this house. Or I will in 5 minutes. "No," Arthur said. "You won't." Arthur looked at Henry. "Read it, Henry. Read the clause." Henry Sterling pulled out the thick blue document, the one Mina had requested. He adjusted his glasses and looked at the stunned crowd. 3 years ago, Henry began, his voice projecting like a judge delivering a verdict. Mr. Arthur Blackwood discovered that his son Julian was embezzling funds from the estate to pay for gambling debts and various gifts for Miss Sarah Miller. The crowd murmured. Julian's face went white. At that time, Henry continued, Arthur prepared to disinherit Julian entirely. However, Mina, your wife, begged him not to. She believed you could change. She wanted to save your reputation. Everyone looked at Mina. She stood like a statue, her expression unreadable. "So," Henry said, flipping a page. Arthur agreed to a compromise. He created a conditional trust. This house, Blackwood Hall, and the controlling shares of Blackwood Industries were placed into a holding entity. "I know that," Julian snapped. "The Blackwood Family Trust. I'm the beneficiary." "You were the primary beneficiary," Henry corrected him. "Subject to the moral turpitude clause, specifically Section 4, Paragraph C." Henry looked up, his eyes meeting Sarah's terrified gaze. "The clause states that if the primary beneficiary commits an act of public adultery, brings disrepute to the family name within the walls of Blackwood Hall, or attempts to coerce the grantor into altering the deed, the trust triggers an immediate automatic transfer of assets." "Transfer?" Regina whispered. "Transfer to whom?" Henry smiled. It was a shark smile. "To the secondary beneficiary." "And who is that?" Julian screamed, veins bulging in his neck. "There is no one else. I'm the only son." "The secondary beneficiary is not a blood relative," Henry said, calm. "The secondary beneficiary is defined as the individual who has demonstrated the highest duty of care to the grantor." Henry turned and pointed a finger at the woman in the blue dress. "The deed to Blackwood Hall and 51% of Blackwood Industries currently belongs to Mrs. Mina Blackwood." The silence that followed was absolute. Julian looked at Mina. He looked at the house around him. He looked at the floor beneath his feet. "No," Julian whispered. "That's impossible. She's just the wife." "Not anymore." Mina spoke for the first time since entering the room. Her voice was cool, clear, and devastating. "Now I'm your landlord." "You're lying." Julian lunged at the lawyer. His face twisted in a mask of panic and rage. "Give me those papers." 2 burly security guards hired by Henry Sterling earlier that day stepped out from the shadows and blocked Julian's path. Julian bounced off the chest of the lead guard, stumbling back into the stunned crowd. "It is a legal document filed with the High Court, Julian," Henry said calmly, snapping the briefcase shut. "You are welcome to contest it, but I assure you, the moral turpitude clause is ironclad. You broke the rules. You lost the prize." Regina, trembling with fury, marched up to Mina. "You witch! You manipulated a sick man. We will sue you for everything you have. You'll be penniless by morning." Mina didn't flinch. She simply took a sip of champagne from a fresh glass a waiter had handed her. "You can try Regina, but Henry is the best lawyer in London. And considering I now control the family bank accounts, how exactly do you plan to pay for your legal defense?" Regina's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Without the estate's money, she was powerless. But the most telling reaction came from Sarah. The mistress had been standing close to Julian, but as the reality of the situation sank in, she took a subtle step back. Her eyes darted around the room, calculating. "Julian!" Sarah whispered, her voice shrill. "Does this mean the penthouse? The Cayman accounts?" "Shut up, Sarah," Julian snapped, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'll fix this. It's just a mistake." "It doesn't look like a mistake," Sarah hissed, her adoration vanishing instantly. "It looks like you're broke." Mina laughed, a cold, clear sound that cut through the tension. "Oh, Sarah, you really didn't read the fine print of your relationship, did you? You bet on the wrong horse." Mina walked down the steps of the platform, the blue silk gown rustling softly. She stopped directly in front of Sarah. "Earlier tonight," Mina said, her voice dangerously low, "you asked me to clean up a spill. You treated me like the help." Sarah crossed her arms, trying to regain her bravado. "So what, you think a piece of paper changes anything? Julian loves me. You're just a paper landlord." "Actually," Mina smiled, "I'm the woman who signs the security checks." Mina raised her hand and signaled the guards. "Gentlemen, this woman is trespassing on private property. Please remove her." "You can't do that," Sarah shrieked as a guard grabbed her arm. "Regina, Julian, do something." Julian stepped forward instinctively, but he stopped when he saw the look in his father's eyes. Arthur was grinning like a wolf. "Don't touch her!" Sarah screamed, thrashing as the guard began to drag her toward the exit. Her heel caught on the rug, the same rug she had made Mina clean, and she stumbled, falling to her knees. "Wait!" Sarah yelled, looking up at Julian desperately. "Julian, tell them to stop! We're supposed to go to Paris next week." Julian looked at his angry wife, who now held the keys to his entire existence, and then at the screaming woman on the floor. Self-preservation kicked in. I can't," Julian muttered, looking away. "You coward!" Sarah screamed, her face contorted with hate. "I wasted 6 months on you, you pathetic loser." The guests watched in rapt silence as the mistress was hauled up and marched to the doors, her red dress bunched up, her dignity in shreds. As the heavy doors slammed shut behind her, the silence returned to the ballroom. Mina turned back to her husband and mother-in-law. "Now that the trash has been taken out," Mina said, checking her watch, "we need to discuss your living arrangements. I believe the guest wing is too generous for tenants who haven't paid rent." The ballroom was so quiet you could hear the rain weeping against the glass, mourning the end of the Blackwood dynasty, or at least the version of it that Regina and Julian had ruled. Regina was the first to break the silence. She smoothed her gray chiffon dress, her hands trembling slightly, and forced a laugh. It was a brittle, desperate sound. "Well," she said, looking around at the guests who were now openly staring, "this has been a very theatrical evening. But let's be reasonable, Mina. You've had your fun. You've humiliated that dreadful girl. Point taken. Now let's go into the study and discuss how to manage the transition quietly. We are family, after all." Mina stepped down from the platform. She didn't look at the guests. She walked straight to Regina, stopping just inches away. She towered over the older woman, not in height but in presence. "Family." Mina repeated the word, tasting like ash. "Family is supposed to protect you. Family is supposed to be a sanctuary. For 7 years, Regina, you have made this house a prison. You criticized the way I walked, the way I dressed, the way I spoke. You told me I was barren. You told me I was unworthy. I was trying to mold you," Regina hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper so the senator wouldn't hear. "I was trying to make you a Blackwood." "And you failed," Mina said calmly, "because I am not a Blackwood. I am something much stronger. I am the woman who survived you." Mina turned to face the room. "There will be no private discussion. There will be no quiet transition. Transparency is the new policy of this administration." She looked at Julian, who was still standing near his father, looking like a lost child. "Julian," Mina said, Do you remember our wedding vows? For richer, for poorer. Julian's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. Yes, yes, Mina, I remember. I meant them. We can fix this. I know I made a mistake, but— You didn't make a mistake, Julian, Mina interrupted. You made a choice. You chose to spend our savings on diamond earrings for your mistress while I was clipping coupons to keep the estate staff paid. You chose to let your mother mock me while you sat there and drank your scotch. You broke the vow. She signaled to Henry Sterling. The lawyer stepped forward, handing Mina a white envelope. This is not a divorce decree, Mina said, holding the envelope out. Not yet. That will take time. This is an eviction notice. Eviction? Julian choked out. You can't kick us out. This is my home. I grew up here. And you never grew up. Arthur's voice cut in from his wheelchair. The old man looked at his son with profound disappointment. A man who cannot respect his wife does not deserve a roof over his head. I built this house, Julian, and I am telling you, you are no longer welcome in it. Regina gasped. Arthur, you can't be serious. Where will we go? Mina tapped the envelope against her palm. I am not heartless, Regina. I know you have no savings because you spent your allowance on cosmetic surgery and galas, so I have arranged alternative accommodation. The penthouse in the city, Regina asked, a glimmer of hope returning. No, Mina said. The gatehouse. A murmur of shock went through the crowd. The gatehouse was a small two-bedroom cottage at the very edge of the estate, usually reserved for the groundskeeper. It was drafty small and miles away from the luxury of the manor. You expect me to live in a gardener's cottage? Regina shrieked. It's rent-free, Mina said with a shrug. For 30 days. After that you'll have to find a job. I hear the local supermarket is hiring cashiers. Julian's face turned a violent shade of red. I will not. I am a Blackwood. You are a guest, Mina corrected him, her voice ice cold. And you have overstayed your welcome. Pack your bags. You have 1 hour to vacate the main house. If you are not out by midnight, I will have security escort you out, just like your girlfriend. She turned to the crowd, raising her glass. Ladies and gentlemen, the party is over. Thank you for coming. Please take a bottle of champagne on your way out. I have a lot of cleaning up to do. 6 months later, the winter snow had melted, giving way to a vibrant, blooming spring. The heavy velvet drapes that had once made Blackwood Hall feel like a mausoleum had been pulled back, letting the sunlight flood into the grand foyer. In the center of the entrance hall, a massive vase of fresh white lilies stood on the console table. Their scent was light, fresh, and clean, the smell of a new beginning. Mina sat in the master's study, the room that had once been forbidden to her. She was reviewing the quarterly reports for Blackwood Industries. The numbers were up. Without Julian siphoning off funds for gambling and affairs, and without Regina's exorbitant spending, the company was finally profitable again. Mrs. Blackwood? Mina looked up. It was Thomas the florist. The arrangements for the garden party are ready, he said, smiling. And Mr. Arthur is asking for you in the conservatory. Thank you, Thomas. Mina stood up. She wore a tailored white blazer and trousers, sharp, professional, and elegant. She walked through the house that was finally hers. The ghosts of the past had been scrubbed away. She walked out into the gardens. There, sitting in the sun, was Arthur. He looked healthier than he had in years. The stress of watching his legacy crumble was gone. He was reading a newspaper, a cup of tea by his side. You wanted to see me, Arthur? I did, the old man said, putting down his paper. I just got a letter. He handed her a crumpled envelope. The handwriting was jagged and desperate. It was from Julian. Mina scanned the letter. It was a plea for money. Julian wrote that the gatehouse was unlivable, that Regina was driving him insane in the small space, and that no one in town would hire him because of the scandal. He begged for a loan. He begged for another chance. Do you want to reply? Arthur asked, watching her carefully. Mina folded the letter and handed it back. No, I think silence is the only answer he deserves. He has his health. He has his mother. That is more than I had when they tried to break me. Arthur nodded, a look of pride in his eyes. You are a hard woman, Mina. I had good teachers, she replied softly. Just then, a commotion at the front gates caught their attention. Through the wrought iron bars, Mina could see a beat-up sedan stalled on the side of the road. A woman was standing next to it, arguing with a tow truck driver. Even from this distance, the blonde hair and the faded red coat were unmistakable. It was Sarah. She looked different. Her hair was unkempt. Her clothes looked cheap, and the arrogance that had defined her posture was gone, replaced by the slump of defeat. Rumor had it she had been fired from the marketing firm after the scandal at the party went viral. In a town this small, no one wanted to hire the woman who had tried to humiliate Arthur Blackwood. Sarah looked through the gates. For a moment her eyes locked with Mina's across the expanse of the manicured lawn. Mina didn't look away. She didn't gloat. She simply stood there, the lady of Blackwood Hall, flanked by the white lilies and the stone walls of her fortress. Sarah was the one who looked down. She turned, got into the passenger seat of the tow truck, and was hauled away, disappearing down the road like a bad memory. The trash really does take itself out eventually, Arthur noted, taking a sip of his tea. Mina smiled. She took a deep breath of the fresh spring air. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was the victor. Come on, Arthur, she said, resting her hand on his shoulder. Let's go inside. We have a company to run. As they turned back toward the house, the sun hit the windows of the great mansion, making them shine like gold. The house was no longer a symbol of her oppression. It was her kingdom, and long may she reign. And that is how the dull housewife became the queen of the empire. Julian and Regina thought they could treat her like garbage because she was quiet. But they forgot that you should never fear the storm you can hear, you should fear the silent one. Mina didn't just win, she completely flipped the script. What did you think of Arthur's revenge? Do you think he was right to trick his own son? Or was it too harsh to leave them in the gatehouse? Personally, I think they got off easy. Let me know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Mina? If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I post new drama stories every single day. Don't forget to hit the bell notification so you're the first to hear the next scandal. Thanks for watching.